Hi friends, welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today we have to discuss about difference between list and tuple in Python programming. What are the main differences are there between list and tuple that can be discussed? First point, a list can be created using square brackets, whereas in the case of tuple, a tuple is created using only parentheses. Okay, the example for list is list 1 is equal to within the square brackets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the data objects that are separated by comma. Okay, here we have to use square bracket to create the list. Here list 1 is nothing but list name. Here the data objects are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are separated by comma. Suppose we want to print this list. Here we have to write print of list 1. Whereas in the case of tuple, we have to use parenthesis to create the tuple. The example is tuple 1 is equal to within the parenthesis the data objects that are separated by comma. Tuple 1 is the tuple name and the data objects are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are separated by comma. Suppose we want to print this tuple 1, so we have to use this statement print of tuple 1. Okay, so how to create a list and how to print the list. How to create a tuple and how to print the tuple. Okay, next point is a list is mutable. That means once a list is created, it is possible to modify or update according to the need. Whereas in the case of tuple, tuple is immutable. That means once a tuple is created, it is not possible to modify or update according to the need. Next point is list consumes more memory. Suppose we want to store some data objects in a list, it can take more memory because list can uses 2 blocks of memory. One block is used for storing the Python data object information and another block is used for storing the data. Because of that reason, list consumes more memory. Whereas in the case of tuple, tuple consumes less memory because tuple uses only single block of memory. It does not require any extra space. Next one, third point, list iteration is slower and is time consuming. Okay, so to perform the iteration on the elements of the list, it can take more time and more time consuming because to access the elements from 2 blocks. Because of that reason, we can say that list iteration is slower and it is also time consuming. Whereas in the case of tuple, tuple iteration is slower because it can access the elements from a single block of memory. Because of that reason, we can say that tuple iteration is slower and tuple iteration is faster and it can take less time consuming. Next, fourth point, list provides many inbuilt methods. So list provides several built-in methods such as append method, insert method, sort method, remove method. Okay, these are the various inbuilt methods in the list. Whereas in the case of tuple, tuple provides very limited built-in functions such as max function, min function, count function, etc. So tuple provides only limited built-in functions, whereas in the case of list provides many built-in methods. Next one, list is very helpful in case of deletion and insertion operations. So list is useful to perform insert operations and deletion operations. To perform that operations, list is very useful. Whereas in the case of tuple, tuple is useful only for read-only operations such as only accessing the elements, because once a tuple is created, it is not possible to change or modify. So because of that reason, we can say that tuple is useful only for read-only operations. Okay. Next one, a list have a variable length, whereas tuple have a fixed length. So list has a variable length because we can change the size of a list by inserting or appending data objects into a list, because list is mutable. Whereas in the case of tuple, it is not possible to modify once a tuple is created. Because of that reason, tuple has a fixed length, whereas a list has a variable length. Next one, list operations are more error prone. Okay, while you are performing the insertion operation and deletion operations on a list, it is the possibility of getting error. Okay, so the chances of getting error is more in the case of list while performing insertion and deletion operations. Whereas in the case of tuple, tuple operations are safe. Okay, because once a tuple is created, it is not possible to modify. Only we are performing read-only operations on a tuple. Because of that reason, we can say that so there is no chances of getting error because tuple operations are safe. Next one, a list is created using square brackets. That is already discussed, and this is the example for the list. A tuple is created using parenthesis. That is already discussed. This is the example for tuple. Okay. Creating a list is slower because two memory blocks needs to be accessed. Okay, to create a list, we have to use two memory blocks. Whereas in the case of tuple, to create a tuple, it uses only single block of memory. Okay, next one. An element in a list can be removed and updated. Once a list is created, it is possible to remove an element from a list. It is possible to update an element in a list. Whereas in the case of tuple, it is once a tuple is created, it is not possible to remove one element. It is not possible to update one element in a tuple because tuple is immutable in nature, whereas in the case of list, list is mutable in nature. Next one. Once a list is created, the list can be sorted by calling the list.sort method. By using that method, we can sort the elements in a list. Whereas in the case of tuple, we cannot sort the elements of a tuple because tuple is immutable in nature. Next one, List has a large memory, whereas in the case of tuple has a small memory. Next one, indexing speed is slower in list, whereas in the case of indexing speed is faster in tuple. Indexing means every element, the elements in a list starts with the index 0, ends with index n minus 1. Okay, indexing in a list is slower, indexing in a tuple is faster, because in the case of tuple it uses pointers. Because of that reason we can say that indexing is faster. Next one is list is stored in two blocks of memory. That is already discussed at the previous points. To create a list, it uses two blocks of memory. One block is used for storing the Python objects information, and another block is variable length. In that block, we have to store the list data. But whereas in the case of tuple uses only a single block of memory. It does not require any extra space to store new objects, because once a tuple is created, it is not possible to add an element into a tuple. So because of that reason, it uses single block of memory. There is no requirement of extra space for adding new objects into a tuple. Whereas in the case of a list, once a list is created, it is also possible to append an element to extend a list. So because of that reason, we require extra space to store new objects. Okay, so that is the reason list uses two blocks of memory, whereas in the case of tuple uses single block of memory. So these are the 15 differences between a list and a tuple. So we can see some practical examples to differentiate list and tuple. In this video, we can go for the system for implementation.
How much amount of memory for storing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements in the list? Okay. How much amount of memory that can be taken by the tuple for storing these 5 elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? For that one, I am copy the two lines, Control C, Control V. To know how much amount of memory that can be taken for storing these 5 objects in the list, print of list dot underscore underscore size of underscore underscore open parenthesis close parenthesis. So here list is the list name and the size of function is used to calculate how much amount of memory that can taken by the list. Okay. Now, so execute this code. So 80 bytes of memory are required for storing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements in the list called list. Okay. Now, how much amount of memory for storing these 5 elements in the tuple? I am copy these two lines, paste these two lines. Next, here I am copying this line and paste this line. Here replacing list with tuple. So execute this line. So see this one, only 64 bytes of memory required for storing these 5 elements in the tuple. So we already seen one difference. List takes more memory and tuple takes less memory. So here for storing these 5 elements, list can take 80 bytes of memory. For storing these 5 elements, tuple can take only 64 bytes of memory. So, one difference is practically we are implementing it. Next one. Suppose we are adding one more element into the list. For that one, I am using list.append 6. Okay, whatever the element that we want to add to the list, for that purpose we have to use append method. Within the parenthesis, we are giving whatever the element you want to add to the list. So now print of list. See this one. Previously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements are there. Now the list contains 6 elements. Okay. Now suppose we want to add the element 6 to the tuple. So tuple dot append 6. It is not possible because once the tuple is created, it is not possible to modify. Hence, we are getting the error. So, we are executing that one. See this one, we are getting error. Tuple object has no attribute append. Okay, so once the tuple is created, it is not possible to modify. Okay, this is another difference. Okay, now I am taking another list. List 1 is equal to 5, 2, 7, 3, 4, 1. Okay. Now we want to sort all the elements of given list. For that one, I am to use one method called list1 dot sort. List1 dot sort. Okay. Now we have to execute this code. After that, again print of list1. Execute it. So see this one, we are sorting all the elements of list 1. Before sorting, the elements of list 1 are 5, 2, 7, 3, 4, 1. After sorting, the elements are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Okay. Next, we want to sort the elements of tuple. I am taking tuple 1. Tuple 1 is equal to, I am taking the same elements 5, 2, 7, 3, 4, 1. Tuple 1 dot sort. Tuple 1 dot sort. Print of tuple 1. It is not possible to sort all the elements of tuple 1 because once a tuple is created, it is not possible to modify. So hence we are getting the error. So see, we are getting the error. So this is the practical implementation of differences between list and tuple. Okay, so thank you Andy, thank you one and all for watching this video. If you really like this video, please click on the like button and click on the share button to share that video to your friends and classmates. If you have any doubts, please put your doubts in the comment section. I will clarify your doubts. Don't forget to subscribe my YouTube channel Divvela Srinivasa. After subscribing, click on the bell icon to get the future updates in my YouTube channel. Thank you one and all for watching this video.